you, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to introduce Professor Raymond Gibbs, who is a member of the psychology faculty of the University of California, Santa Cruz. Professor Gibbs' work concerns a range of theoretical issues, ranging from questions about the role of embodied experience in thought and language, to looking at people's use and understanding of figurative language, metaphor, irony, idioms. Professor Gibbs is especially interested in bodily experience and linguistic meaning. Much of his research is motivated by theories of meaning in philosophy, linguistics, and comparative literature. Professor Gibbs' distinguished scholarly contribution to the fields of experimental psycholinguistics and cognitive science is just outstanding. He is the editor of Metaphor and Symbol, the associate editor of the Journal of Mental Imagery. He is a current member of the editorial board's Journal of Pragmatics, Intercultural Pragmatics, Cognitive Linguistics, Discourse Processes. He has published numerous books, among which are Embodiment and Cognitive Science, Intentions of Experience of Meaning, Figurative Language and Thought, The Poetics of Mind, Figurative Thought, Language and Understanding, and so on and so forth, as well as more than 100 journal articles and more than 50 book chapters. Professor Gibbs' research interests have wide interdisciplinary application to all fields concerned with mind, meaning, and interpretation. And today, his extraordinary ability to demonstrate and explain his multidisciplinarity in the field of pragmatics is embodied in the lecture he will now deliver. It is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Raymond Gibbs to present the lecture entitled, Can There Be a Pragmatic Theory for the Entire World? So please welcome with me Professor Gibbs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm delighted that you all survived to the last day. The genesis of this talk today goes back to my experience as a graduate student in the 1970s, where I was very interested in pragmatics. And I was reading everything that was written by Austin and Searle and Grice, and soon after that, all of the work by Sperber and Wilson. And I was very interested in these kind of broad theories of pragmatics that tried to propose these general principles of how pragmatics, sometimes rooted in cognitive things, could account for how people spoke and understood one another in the entire world. And I recall one time, there was an article that I read in the journal Language and Society, I think it was, by a linguist named Ed Keenan, who did some work in the country of Madagascar. And his conclusion from looking at the way these individuals talked and understood, he said, Grice's conversational postulates, his maxim of cooperation, and so forth, simply did not work in this culture. And that was the beginning of something that I have seen for the last 30 years of this interesting tension in the study of pragmatics between people who are interested in seeking these general principles, again, sometimes rooted in things having to do with cognition, and then others who are interested in sort of very variable, specific cultural context pragmatics. So on the one hand, we have people seeking generality, looking at regularity across different kinds of contexts, and others who are interested specifically in variation. And this is a tension that I've seen for, again, 30 years, and I actually believe that the journal Intercultural Pragmatics is a wonderful place to see some of these tensions coming out, as scholars sometimes even openly admit these tensions and describe their own particular views on this. What I want to do today is to describe to you a way out of this, in the sense of trying to present a broad way of thinking about not just pragmatics, but human experience that I think can combine stabilities that we find in pragmatics with variabilities and put those together under one big umbrella. And to do this, I'm going to start by telling you about some of the work that I've done in experimental psycholinguistics on pragmatics and show you some of the problems with that work. That leads me to raise a number of issues about how do you combine stability and regularity experience with variability. And then I'll get on to my alternative proposal, which I'm presenting to you today simply as an idea. It isn't I'm completely convinced of this. It's just something I want us all to intellectually sort of try on for size. And so you can tell me perhaps at the end what you think about this. I want to first talk about this work that I did quite some time ago on indirect requests. And indirect requests specify a part of a sequence of events that constitute what I consider to be a transaction of goods between speakers and listeners. And there's lots of ways that in American English we can make requests indirectly of one another. So we can say things like about people's ability, such as can you wash the dishes? We can mention something about their willingness to do something, such as will you wash the dishes? We could ask something about imposition. Does the request impose on them? Would you mind washing the dishes? We can also just make a simple statement about our desires, such as I want you to wash the dishes. We can make a statement of fact about the world, such as the dishes need to be washed. Or we could even just make a comment or a question about someone's thoughts about an issue, such as how about washing the dishes? And so one question is, are all of these equivalent? Can we just use these interchangeably in making a request, such as trying to get somebody to wash the dishes? And the particular